Well,
We're live.
Okay,
Definitely.
well, here we are. Welcome to ResourceWorks from Home. I'm Stuart Muir. I'm with ResourceWorks. We're doing a series of webinars during the COVID-19 period. We've done a number so far, and we'll be doing some more in future. Today's the first time we've done a live, wide open Facebook Live webinar like this one. And we think we've got all the technical stuff down pat, but have a little patience if there's any little glitches. We've been practicing. I'm going to be introducing Quick Dick McDick. We're very excited about having our special guest today, so thanks for coming. I'm going to ask Margaretta from ResourceWorks to take you through a couple of little details that will help this to be a smooth call, because we will have some interactive opportunities towards the end of the hour. Margaretta.
Thanks so much, Stuart. Really excited to have everyone here. Thank you to Quick Dick for joining us all the way from Saskatchewan. For those joining from home, if you have some questions, you can ask them using either the Q&A option in the Zoom app. If you're joining by phone, participating might be a little bit more difficult. No promises, but if you send me an email, if you got this invitation by email, I could try to get your question in. But otherwise, through the app, you can use the question and answer option. You can also write something into the chat. And finally, if you're joining us from Facebook Live, if you leave a question there, a member of our team will make sure we get it. Enjoy the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties, feel free to flip me a note. But otherwise, have a good time. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Margaretta. Now, he was once called the most Saskatchewan thing to come to humor since corner gas. And Quick Dick McDick, can you wave for us, Quick Dick?
Yes, this is me in this corner of your screen, whichever one it might be.
His take on everything from protester diets to the federal carbon tax to Coastal GasLink pipeline, energy use, farming, has been captivating audiences across the country since he started this not very long ago. His YouTube videos have been shared by all sorts of people, like the former Premier of Saskatchewan, Brad Wall. And right now he's a farmer in Saskatchewan. He's near the community of Tufnell. He's out there working really hard today. And to find the hour that he's giving us, he's had to juggle things. So thank you, Quick Dick, for that. Just a little more in the intro, though. We know that you spent 19 hours in the Canadian oil patch. You spent 7 years there as an operations manager for an oil field trucking outfit. So that brings you into an interesting space here where you're an informed speaker, not just about farming, but about energy too. So we're just thrilled that you've been able, even during calving season, you've been telling us on the pre-call about all the other chores. Wow, you have a full plate, my friend, and you're making a special appearance. First time we've had a live webinar like this, and it's on Facebook, on ResourceWorks. So thanks for tuning in. And Quick Dick, can I ask you, how are you doing today? It looks like a fine day. Good weather out there.
Great here. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the introduction and for having me. It's always a pleasure to be there for somebody's first time. You know what I mean? I've got a few heifers that would attest to that right now. But things are beautiful here. We've warmed up a little bit. The snow started to disappear, and you start breathing that melting corrals manure smell around here. You know that spring's in the air, right? It's very fresh.
Now, I've been watching your channel on YouTube. You've got some videos that are like 500,000 views on all kinds of interesting subjects. What got you going with this? Why did you decide to make these videos and put them out so the world can see them?
If anybody ever would have told me there was 500,000 people that wanted to see this stuff, I actually would laugh at them. It's still kind of weird to hear that, but this just started as just some small time stuff, on a Snapchat platform actually. And it's just kind of sharing local humor with some folks around the Tufnell and Foam Lake area that found it entertaining. Started with a few family members, and then you get to the point where your phone's blowing up all the time. You're like, send me this one, send me this one, send me this one. You're just like, this is getting to be a little bit too much. So then I just made a decision. It's just like, this can just go to YouTube, and then they can just watch it as many times as they want. And things escalated quickly from there.
Did they ever? And where can people see the videos for themselves?
Yeah, you can see them on my channel. Just go to YouTube and search Quick Dick McDick, and I'm sure it will take you to the right spot.
Okay.
I hope it does.
Good. Now, I'm sure lots of people will be seeing those, or they've already seen them. But today you're you're really in character as Quick Dick for us, and you're going to give us a bit of a take on things. I'd like to get some of the views you have on educating the latte sipping urbanites about realities of energy and life on the farm. Can you give us a little taste of your thoughts, Quick Dick McDick, on issues like that?
Absolutely. So, urbanites is a strange word. They're folks that live in cities and things like that, which is interesting. I feel like people are really out of touch with what it takes to sometimes get that latte into your hands. Even we could break this right down to commercial transportation. I mean, coffee beans don't just show up for people to fresh grind or roast or however it is that we do these things. But it's farming, agricultural operations, oil and gas operations. Man, we even break down right to fisheries and everything. So much industry in Canada here plays a vital part in what's going on. You can be sitting in a city saying to yourself, "Hey, no, well, I got this glass of milk locally here." Yes, you got it locally at your local grocery store, which imported it from a close by agricultural operation, sometimes an agricultural operation that was a little ways away, but somewhere in rural Canada, somebody is producing this stuff and getting it to your table. And then it takes oil and gas energy to get it there. So there's so many working pieces to what happens. And I think that's where you see a lot of Quick Dick's videos that go up onto YouTube, is just trying to slightly educate people on what it actually takes to get that latte into your hands, because it's much more extensive than you would think, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. On the call today, I think there's a lot of people who are from the natural resource sector. So that means they're from agriculture and transportation, oil and gas, forestry, mining, and all those.
Well, tip of the hat to all you fantastic folks out there.
They're the ones who are keeping the country going, especially now through these times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I think the humorous approach that you're taking is one thing that resonated with me, because a lot of the time, you're in this dense policy, people's eyes start glazing over. If you're talking about the economics, you're the most boring thing ever. And yet, we feel these are really important issues. They're what our everyday material life is based on. You've really gotten into the same place that a lot of people are. Do you think that there is a role for others to be more approachable like you are about these important issues?
I would hope so. If there's I'll holler out to a few of the oil and gas guys that are out there watching right now, guys and girls. Sorry, that was supposed to be gender neutral. If any of you have sat through safety training, you will find about 15 minutes into it that you have completely lost interest in what is happening. You've been through the course 4 times before, and you start counting down hours and minutes and seconds until you could possibly write your test, get your certificate, and get out of it, right? This goes in lots of different seminars and lots of places. And the one thing that people will find in the world is that if you can kind of keep people moderately interested in what you're doing through humor, they're much more receptive to what you have to say. I mean, sometimes they're not. There's clearly some people that are not receptive whatsoever to what Quick Dick has to say, but hopefully we can slowly change that. But the most important thing that you could possibly find out there, as far as I'm concerned, is laughter. And so if we can find some comedy in some of these things and some of these important issues that we look at now, being as sensitive as possible as we can to some very sensitive issues that maybe shouldn't be made fun of, lots of which we're seeing through this COVID pandemic going on. There's some lines sometimes that Quick Dick might cross, but I don't think any of them are too far offside. I think it's just kind of stating the obvious. But so you got to try and keep your humor in check a little bit, but humans are more receptive to something when they find themselves in a jovial mood versus when they feel like they're being attacked.
Right. Now, there's one issue where I know you weren't so jovial earlier this year. We talked about the carbon tax. And from a farmer's perspective, I know that there's all these rebates, and the government talks about how everyone's actually better off because you get more money back and stuff. We're waiting to figure that out, I guess. But from a farmer's perspective, it would look very different. So, what's going on with the trade exposed sectors like agriculture, oil and gas that you know so well? Is there a disproportionate effect? What is because we know it's got stuck in people's craw in the West. We hear so often about this. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate if nobody's watched it. You get a chance to watch it. Well, I've done a few on the carbon tax, actually, the federal carbon tax here in Canada. But the problem is that it's something that's been implemented by our federal government that's here to help us reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in Canada, which for the life of me I cannot understand how a tax would help to reduce this, because they say, well, it's encouraging people not to pollute by finding alternative measures, and they'll have to pay this tax otherwise. And the biggest point I always want to get to is that if you're punishing somebody before you have given them a solution on what can happen. Now, there's incentive programs out there, and there's actually, I don't want to go into a lot of it because it's going to spoil what I'm working on for Monday here, but there's a lot of people out there that actually work towards greener decisions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we certainly don't need a carbon tax to make people understand that that's what needs to happen. But if a government was going to bring out something like a carbon tax, what you would hope is that they would give you an alternative, saying like, here, we've actually made these large investments in nuclear technology, or made green energy more available. And that's the thing where a lot of I would assume a lot of agricultural producers, when they hear green energy and when we hear electric cars and electric tractors and electric trucks, I hope people understand that in rural Saskatchewan alone here, we actually have a hard enough time getting power to service bin fans, let alone plug in a combine or a tractor. And when you go onto the other side of that, you can't just go for 6 hours in the field and then say, oh, well, it's just time to stop for a recharge, and then go to your nearest charging station, plug in your combine and play Farmcraft while you wait for it to recharge, when there's clearly a hailstorm coming in over the front. Like, it's not an alternative that's going to work. And what the carbon tax has done is it has said, we really don't care what's available to you. Here's what it's going to cost you to use natural resources. And even if we could plug those tractors in, you get charged a carbon tax on electricity as well. So if we're saying that this is the solution and it's going to make the world better, well, then why would you get charged when you use it as well? So if you watch this federal carbon tax video, the Overnight Oats version that I did recently, the part 2 about a carbon tax that really upsets me is that it's not a carbon tax, right? It's a carbon levy, and then you'll receive it back on your tax return, which, yes, is the case, which we started in 2019. I received back $445, 45 of which was because I live in rural Saskatchewan and have no alternatives to it. So it would have been December of last year when the grain dryer was running on Diagonal Farms for 30 days. The carbon tax charge on that natural gas burned drying grain, which needs to happen before it goes in the bin, you would completely lose your entire crop, was $840. So my yearly rebate is $445, and in 1 month I have spent almost twice that.
Right now,
how's this a rebate?
Is there an alternative that you can shift to? Because that's kind of the idea of these taxes. It's meant to push you to an alternative that's greener. What's the alternative to this?
So an alternative to drying grain, you can run it on natural gas, or you can run it on propane with the amount of volumes that we need to run through here. I'm sure if we did move to electricity on it, first of all, we would have to figure out how we're going to service that for the simple fact that, like I said earlier, we can't even get all of our bin fans running all the time. And if you get too many guys going on one grid on farms together that are on one grid, you have some serious problems. We actually even have those problems with natural gas right now, believe it or not. And I think that's what a lot of people really can't wrap their heads around, is that when you get out into rural Saskatchewan, you are a long ways from nowhere, where you'll see, electric transit and electric cars and even electric commercial vehicles, which I'm not up to speed on exactly where we're at with those because I've been out of the game for a little while here, but they will work very well close to urban centers. But when you get into rural areas, it's just not an option. And that's why, if we're going to be moving towards something, if it's going to replace fossil fuels, which, let's be honest, we're never going to replace fossil fuels. We can reduce our consumption of it, but I'm pretty sure that we still need Kevlar vests for our law enforcement agents. We still need syringes and masks and gloves, shoes, paved roads, tires. Yeah, I'm giving away a lot of stuff that's coming up Monday, but if we're going to be moving towards something, it needs to be something that's going to replace the horsepower, mobile horsepower that we get from oil and gas products, which unfortunately at this point in time is not electricity.
Quick Dick, you had 2 decades in the Canadian oil patch. What did you learn there that you're bringing to your shows now?
Well, I learned that as soon as you leave the oil patch, you can stop shaving, which has been neat. So the expense that I saved on razor blades was fantastic, but so much, and it really gives you a broad view of how our oil and gas sector works, because a lot of people, I'm going to say even in cities, not even in cities, but in rural Saskatchewan, have this idea that when you go to the oil field, it is a bunch of guys that are covered from head to toe in crude, and when a rig strikes oil, it's like guys are out of the derrick and everything. Well, I used to watch TV back in movies from back in 1940 as well, but that's not how it is right now. We are actually we are a very, very environmentally responsible country when it comes to oil and gas extraction, and people's minds are blown when you actually work with Americans that have come up to work from south of the 49. They're shocked at the environmental regulations that we have and have to operate through. And when you find the different sectors involved, it's not just a drilling rig. I mean, we're talking survey, we're talking seismic, we are talking construction crews. Then we got rig haulers that move a rig in, and this is on and on and on and on. Man, so many people are getting so much of a look into what's happening on Monday's video here right now. But there are so many parts to it, and our economy's not just people that work in oil and gas. But I'm just gonna pick a random town here right now. I don't know why it popped into my head, but Three Hills, Alberta. Go there and ask anyone in that town that runs a restaurant or a hotel or a truck wash, and ask them if the oil and gas sector being in the toilet right now has affected their business. And I promise you, they will tell you, yes, it has, because everybody relies on all of this activity to keep their local economies going,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For a lot of people, farmers are out here growing things, green leaves and all that. Oil and gas is over there doing their stuff, mining's over there. But your perspective on it seems to be bringing together these different views. When you go down to the co-op or wherever you go in Tufnell, Saskatchewan to see your fellow farmers for a coffee, what do the farmers say to you? Quick Dick, you're out of your mind. What are you doing YouTube videos for? What's your reaction?
It's very strange. The first thing they ask me is, am I being recorded right now? And to which I say, well, no, not at the moment here. I always make sure I've got everybody's permission. I learned that in the early days, that you got to make sure people know what you're up to. We've only got the post office in Tufnell, but it's hilarious that everybody seems to show up to get their mail at the same time, and there's a coffee pot there. Now that hasn't happened ever since we started the social distancing thing, but getting into anywhere you go, people are generally very receptive, and I get a lot of people that thank me for saying what's on their mind, which is neat. I feel like a lot of people are afraid to say things nowadays because they're afraid of social media and the fallout that they'll get on it. But I'm a guy named Dick McDick, and I don't. If I have social media fallout over me saying something, well, then that's okay. I'll just continue my daily life. You know what I mean?
Hey, I've got a question from Steve in Calgary. He's a big fan of yours already. And
well, thank you, Steve.
He's appreciative that you're here. He has seen Michael Moore, the film director, his recent movie called Planet of Humans, and he's wondering if you've heard of this movie and have any thoughts on it.
I have not, and I apologize for not having seen it. Believe it or not, Dick McDick does not watch a lot of TV or news for that matter, because news pisses him off most of the time. It's been a time thing lately. I don't even have TV hooked up in the house here, because every now and then when you get some time, you just kind of put some music on, and find myself editing videos quite a bit lately. But sorry, Steve, I haven't seen it.
Now, as I understand it, I haven't seen it either, but I've been reading about it. He is suggesting that some of the alternative energy solutions that we've been hearing so much about may not be as green as said. And we have this debate emerging of those who want to see deindustrialization, just less of everything, versus those who see a kind of pathway to a greener world based on renewables, alternatives, and squaring that. And I get the sense that a lot of people who are in the traditional resource sector are applauding mightily at what Michael Moore has done with this film. So it's interesting stuff from what I can tell. I'm looking forward to seeing it too.
Well, Steve, thank you. I will put it on my list here and have a look at it. And that's a very good point that you mentioned there, Stuart, is if we actually look at the life cycle of lithium batteries and a few of these things, which I'm not going to get into the specifics on right now because there's a lot more research to be done on it. But we need to be careful at what we're replacing fossil fuels with when we do go in that direction, because sometimes, the result can actually be worse than what we were actually doing, right?
Right. Now, quick, one of the videos you've done that had almost I think the largest or second largest amount of views was on the pipeline being built from northern British Columbia across BC to the coast. That's the Coastal GasLink pipeline. It's being built for the purpose of serving LNG Canada, which is the biggest capital project ever in Canadian history. It's happening now. But as you picked up, there's some pushback on it. I just wonder if you can give us a live taste, if you can sort of conjure up what you were telling your camera when you taped the Coastal GasLink. Can you actually give us a little live snippet of that video?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's going on here is we have some of the largest natural gas reserves in the world here in Canada, right? And there's actually been a lot of oil companies, specifically up in the Groundbirch area where the Coastal GasLink pipeline is set to kick off and head over to Kitimat. Not only has there been companies over the last 10 to 15 years, and Dick knows this because he's been a part of the whole operation, right from in the field to in the office, that have invested heavily into oil and gas exploration and extraction in those areas. And not only invested in those areas, but there are so many surrounding communities that have come to depend on that activity happening around there. Be it equipment dealerships, truck dealerships, all these different things. And you get a lot of, there was a lot of global and countrywide pushback over this happening with the Wet'suwet'en, which when you dig deep into it, a lot of what was happening there with the protests actually had very little to do with some of the community. It was different segregated parts of it. But the problem is for anybody to protest against something like this is quite hypocritical, for the fact that if greenhouse gas emissions are a global problem, the goal of Canada exporting liquid natural gas is to replace coal fire and other methods that are obviously much more toxic to our environment than liquid natural gas. So we're all going to have to make some sacrifices. And a big thing that didn't get put in that video that I think everyone needs to understand is that once a pipeline's come through, not only do you generate a lot of revenue within your local economies when these are coming through, but landowners actually get royalties off of these things going through their land. And actually, when they're buried underground, I know of several agricultural operations that farm right over top of a pipeline. They don't affect the place whatsoever. And you make some cash off of that. And your environmental impact of it is very low. People are worried about trees getting knocked over and a bunch of different things. We all do know that Canada has a forestry sector that works closely with the oil and gas sector to ensure that anything that's harvestable that can go to OSB plants and planer mills and a bunch of different things, those steps are taken. To take the investment that all these companies have made and all these people have worked on and what's so vital to so many parts of the economy, and just say, hey, you're going to cut our land in half. This isn't happening. And then this widespread across Canada and North America, for that matter, protesters being interviewed saying, well, what are you protesting? The pipeline? Well, what's in the pipeline? Well, it's oil. Okay, so we don't even know what we're protesting. We're just grabbing a sign and we're heading on out there because it's the cool thing to do. Have we stopped for 10 seconds and just been like, hey, if this doesn't happen, what could it do to our economy? Well, unfortunately, we're having a pretty close look at what happens to an economy that stops right now. And it's terrifying. And it wasn't happening when this video was made, but now that it is, it gives us an opportunity to have a really close look, to be like, hey, maybe a lot of this stuff moving and people working is kind of an important thing, because when we get away from our dependency on oil and gas, it's because nothing's moving. And I'm sure, as all of us can attest right now, that's a scary thing to have happening, right?
The shutdown of the meat processing plants, that's going to go directly back to the farms. And what are your fellow farmers saying about this? How soon before this becomes, for beef producers, an issue?
It's already happening. We saw a 30-cent slide immediately upon the announcement of Cargill having some problems. And there are already feedlots have the, like, I can't speak for all feedlots, obviously, but generally feedlots have the capability and have the plan to feed for around the 2-week mark kind of thing that are going directly to Cargill plants and other places. But what happens is it's essentially the same thing. And that's why I can't stress enough that everything in Canada is so interconnected with each other, because it's kind of the same thing with the glut of global oil we see. Whereas with global oil, it's because nobody's flying, nobody's doing a whole bunch of other things, and we've obviously got a Saudi and Russia thing going on. But when you look actually at our food supply chain specifically in reference to beef, it's kind of the same thing. It's just the difference is that we're not slaughtering animals right now. The demand for the product is actually still there, which is why this is so much more serious than what's happening with the oil and gas industry too, is that we've been interrupted by COVID itself in between, where you have product coming in and it's live product. Like the thing with oil and gas is that it's been around for quite a few years, and it can sit around for quite a few years still. But with live beef, you have a living organism that's going to come, and it's a specific timeline. And I think that's where a lot of people lose track of the food supply chain, is how it's a very organized dance. Yeah. From producers to feedlots to slaughterhouses to actual grocery stores, to distribution to grocery stores where we actually buy it. And now the unfortunate thing that's going to happen here now, which I'm sure will have a lot of beef producers upset right now, is that we are going to lose that slaughter capacity. There's going to be a little bit of product still trickling to market, and the price that you're going to pay at a grocery store for beef is going to be through the roof. Whereas the price that you're actually going to get paid for delivering beef to the slaughterhouse is going to be next to nothing. And it's to the point now where you're actually looking at something very serious of some mass slaughters that have to go on, for the simple fact that when things start piling up a little bit too much, you have live animals that you're dealing with here that require food and water just the same as we do. So it's a very scary time, actually. Yeah.
So worst case, when would that slaughter happen?
I think it's going to depend on a lot of different factors, and I don't know if anybody's got a timeline in on what's happening right now. I think it's just we're in the very early stages of it, but it's going to happen very fast for the simple fact that if Cargill can't get things moving, we're going to have a lot of. It's not just cattle either. Sort any swine farmers and everybody out there in the pork industry and everything. It's the same thing for everybody, right?
Right.
So it's vital that things get solved quickly, or once again we're going to be in quite a bit of trouble.
So you might have to do a video sharing some great recipes for lentils from Saskatchewan.
Hey, so I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, there's I've been prompted by a lot of people to continue the cooking with Quick Dick segments, which is I don't know if anybody noticed, but I didn't use open flame at all in the last segment that I did, but definitely. And I'm hoping to be able to take the opportunity to show some people where your ribeye steak comes from, start to finish. There'll be some parts that we're going to have to omit because some people aren't going to want to know about a few parts of those, but generally the amount of work that goes into it and the logistics, which is there'll be a lot of people, wondering why steaks are worth so much at the store right now. It's actually quite complex, the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, well, great segue into a question from Sally. Thank you, Sally.
Okay.
Who says, thank you for your very entertaining videos. I love them. So do I. You did the vegan video, which Sally loves. Will you be doing more videos? Here's the question for you. Will you be doing more videos on the life cycle of specific things that urbanites love, like meat or gluten-free bread or the milk for their Starbucks coffee? Sally wants to know. Quick Dick, what can you tell us?
Sally, yes, absolutely. So first of all, I got to clear the air here. That was actually not a video towards vegans. It was more video towards protesters, right? So mad vegans can get mad at you pretty fast. I don't mind vegans. Go do your thing, eat what you want. Just make sure you're eating food, right? Absolutely. That's absolutely where a lot of this is going to head. Is actually people getting a look at what happens right down to seeding crops. There's just so much. I think that I even thought was second nature to some people that's happening, that people had no idea that's how it works. So if I had the opportunity, as long as everybody can handle looking at an ugly face like this and while this all happens kind of thing, we'll keep it coming. You're not going to see Quick Dick just being a guy that's carrying around a camera talking to him. We're going to try and make it entertaining and get people involved in it and make them, want to know what's coming next and hopefully laugh while we're doing it, because I think that's what makes it interesting. I'm just going to keep trying to do what I can to show people what rural life is like.
Now here's a question I'm getting all the time. Today it comes from Rod here. He says, hey, Quick Dick, where does the term quick come into your handle? How did you get that in your handle? And explain your whole name, because everyone wants to talk about it when I talk to them about what you're doing.
It was really crazy how it happened. Actually, I was starting up a Snapchat account, and so my name is Dixon. So I've been a Dick all my life. I mean, Dixon is Dick for short. It ain't Richard. You know what I mean? And it didn't work out so good for me on Tinder when I used Quick Dick McDick there. So I just figured I'd switch it over to Snapchat, and it did better there. But I think it was just the fact that the name came first, and then the first few segments that I kind of did really fast, and people thought it was funny. So I just kind of stuck with it. And I don't know, it's maybe something that you don't see a lot out there. And I think that's maybe what keeps it fresh for people, right? They're always wondering what's going to be happening next or what's going to be going on. And, you get the right people searching you out, because you can imagine the Google search results that you would get starting off with Quick Dick. So sorry to anybody that's stumbled upon some inappropriate sites trying to find me, but sometimes kind of want to make yourself hard to be found. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, I did point out in my LinkedIn post for this that this is totally safe for work. So no one needs to be worried if you're on a corporate computer, need I say. But it's been, you've been getting noticed. I've been seeing you have quite a lively life. You've got very full days lately. Could you just take us through a day in the life of Quick Dick McDick down on the farm in Tufnell at this time of year?
Wow. Essentially it's get up in the morning, and it's chores, and then you basically work on the farm with whatever needs to be done. Obviously a lot of cattle to be looked after. I actually there's all kinds of things going on working on equipment. Every now and then you'll stop for lunch, and it's fast and it's on the go. But I mean, essentially you make the most of what you got out of your days. During calving season, things were really crazy. I was actually working with a guy, and I'd cover night shift, because you need to be running the operation 24 hours a day when you've got, a calf, an average of a calf and a half coming an hour, and it's 25 below outside. Can you imagine being born and covered in afterbirth when it's 25 below? Because even when I've got a little bit of snot hanging down on my mustache, it stiffens up really fast. But can you imagine just being your whole body being covered in that? You got to get them little guys and get them up to the heaters and get them where they're warm and dried off, and then back out into the world. And now when we're getting into the spring here, it's a little easier. They don't require as much attention, and we start doing a lot of work on equipment, getting ready to hit the field for seeding. So you get a wide variety of things happening, anywhere from mechanics. Sometimes you're even a plumber if you've got problems, with the pump out on the sewer and a few different things. So you really get a wide variety of tasks going on.
Right. So Quick Dick McDick, you're the real McCoy. And I've got a question here, comment from Shafik out in Vancouver. Hey, Shaf. Great question here. He wants to know what you think it's going to take or need to find a way to work in a more pragmatic manner with, here's a few acronyms we've been hearing, NIMBYists or banana ban anything near anywhere, near anyone. And the CAVIST, I don't even remember what CAVIST stands for, but you get our drift here. What's it going to take to find a way to work more effectively? Because these issues we're talking about are real. You're not making this up. The facts of our dependencies on material things is real. It's not really debatable. What's it going to take?
I think there's a lot of, that's a great question, actually.
Citizens against virtually everything. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, what was that?
Citizens against virtually everything. That's CAVE.
Yeah. Okay. No, I got you. I follow you. It's people's train of thought actually is the first thing. If there's ever a goal that eventually I hope I would have in mind while doing this is to hopefully, first of all, there's this doomsday group of people out there that are saying this has to change now, and we need to take this as a turning point right now with the economy on its complete hind end to just go forward in a different direction from here. And then you have on the other side of the spectrum people saying that will never happen. Get used to oil and gas because it's not going anywhere, and this is going to be the way that it's going to be forever. I think the first major step that needs to happen for us to move forward as a country, let alone a globe, is for everybody to start saying, "Hey, I need to give a little bit on my side." And hey, God bless you. I love you guys. I used to be one of them, but I mean, all of our guys that are out there in our jacked up F-350s rolling black smoke out of the side of it or whatever, too, saying "F you, Greta." There's parts of that too that we need to try and let go a little bit, and everybody just needs to look at it and say, hey, can we do this a little more efficiently? But what's going to have to happen with that, I think specifically for corporations to get on board with this agricultural operations stuff, is we need a cost-effective alternative. And now it doesn't have to be the same price, but we just need to be able to see some sort of a way where you can slowly transition into something and still make some sort of a profit doing what you're doing. Because just to switch over to green energy or to all of a sudden stop using chemical tomorrow on a lot of these things is just, I don't think people understand what they're asking for when they ask that, because it's just how everything runs right now. So I think the first step in what it would take is for people to just look at each other and go, hey, okay, we need to make some changes, but we need to make sure that we can financially responsibly make these changes. And I think there's more evidence apparent right now to people with what's happening with our economy, that our economy is vital. And when people are running on small margins, you can't afford to do some of these things. So hopefully we can work towards some of those solutions and slowly start making it happen. But that's where maybe another part of the problem would be to slow down social media a little bit, where people can kind of just jump on and say, this is happening right now. And everybody be like, hey, screw you. That's not happening. Man, it can be something. Twitter is something. Side note.
For sure. Yeah. I just want to turn for a moment to the audience watching this, whether it's Facebook Live or directly in Zoom. Please send us a question. There's a tool in Zoom. Margareta, if you want to explain how people can do that in Facebook Live. We're taking your questions now. We've already had some really good ones and comments. So Margareta?
Yeah, just really briefly, if you're joining us on Facebook, and I know there's a bit of a delay, if you type a question into the comment box, one of our teammates, Keith, is sending them over to us here. So Stuart will get a chance to look at it. If you're joining us from the Zoom app, whether that's on your computer or your phone or anything else, there's a Q&A box. If you can't find it, you can also use the chat box, and I'll get that question and I'll pass it along. And if you're joining by phone, I promise to try to check my email. So worst case scenario, maybe I'll get your question that way. Thanks.
Thanks, Margareta. Now, back to our guest here. I heard recently that you not only are becoming a bit of a YouTube star, but you've been in radio. You were on the John Gormley show. Tell me about that. That's the first time that Dick McDick has had that exposure. What do they want to know? Did he have some some questions?
I think mostly what goes on, and it's man, what an honor to be able to be a part of some of these programs. It's been really good to actually have the opportunity to meet some of the people that I've met. But yeah, I think mostly what people look for is well, who are you actually, and like where do you come from? Which is kind of funny. Kind of what you see with Quick Dick is what you get. I didn't think that I was leaving a lot to question. It's just kind of like, this is kind of what's happening every day kind of thing. And we just talk about some funny or maybe not so funny things along the way. But yeah, another big one has been when are you heading into politics kind of thing, which is I could never see happening. I think you need an education for that. I'm not sure how that works, but yeah,
Razor too.
Yes. Has anyone seen the energy minister of Saskatchewan? I don't know if that's 100% true. I think I've seen some beards out there, and I think that's what our federal leader was trying to grow. I'm not sure, but I'll reserve a comment on that.
Yeah, no, so often I see in the comments, people are asking that question, hey, this guy should be prime minister. This guy's got it figured out. Is that going to your head? You have to get a new hat size? Or what?
No.
I know you have
no.
there. I've seen that video.
so snapbacks, right? That's then you can just keep adjusting it. No, not so ever actually. Politics is sometimes it's a dark hole to go down, but I think the key to responsible leadership in our country is what's missing right now. I would say is some real life experiences of some of these things, because it's easy to read about things in a book, and it's easy to learn about them in class and then to try and apply them, which I applaud. Not all of our leaders, but I mean some of them haven't had the experience and what they need to deal with. And if Quick Dick McDick was to go in and have to talk about the uranium mining sector of Saskatchewan, I would not be very good at it because I don't know it. And that's where, sometimes we can get off track with that a little bit with this is just somebody that just doesn't have real life experience with stuff. So I'd see a change in politics, maybe being a team of people, which kind of what it is. And then there's a front man to it, but real life experience is so important in so many things to be able to make a decision on it. And sometimes what you've learned in a class or what you've seen, it just real life experience can't be replaced by that, right? I'd love the opportunity to be able to help out and make some decisions with oil and gas and some agriculture and it's a few different things that I know about. And then sometimes people just don't have any business whatsoever making decisions on the things they are because they don't understand it. And it's frustrating that's what it boils down to. And I think a lot of our federal leadership right now would be evidence towards that. If you were to look into the history of a lot of people, and I think history is an important thing when you're looking at your leaders. What life experience have you got? Because sometimes the only sense you need is common sense. It doesn't need to be taught to you, right?
Mm-hmm. We're getting a few questions here on this same theme,
yeah.
so let's keep running with it. We've got Scott. Here's his perception. I'm reading here. We all know the feds don't care about anything West. How will the West survive? And are you in favor of separation? There's a blunt question for you, Quick Dick McDick.
Oh, I love blunt questions actually, because I am not like like a lot of, I'll just answer your question, and if I'm wrong or somebody doesn't like it, it just kind of is what it is. In no way, shape, or form do I believe that separation is going to do anything good for Canada. We would I don't think we would be smart to separate with a province like Ontario with their manufacturing capabilities. Quebec as well. There's so much manufacturing goes on around there. Our maritime provinces with fisheries and everything. Canada has so much to offer itself that we would be fools to ever cut it in half or to cut pieces of it away. The answer is not for the West to leave. The answer is for all of Canada to start working together. Is the answer, and how we accomplish that, I'm not sure, but I can assure you that it's not by separating from the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know you had a comment about Nova Scotia earlier in this week. You seem to have some familiarity with the place. What are your thoughts on what's unfolding there?
Absolutely, Stuart. Thanks for that. And if there is anybody out there that's listening or watching from the Nova Scotia area, my heart is with Nova Scotia right now. If anyone has had the opportunity to visit that province, it is an absolutely amazing place, and it's where so much of what we're used to here in Saskatchewan resonates throughout Nova Scotia and the Maritimes and many different, all of Canada. That is not something you would expect to happen from it, but unfortunately, these events never are something that you would expect. Nobody's just going to sit down and say, "I really expected that to happen." It's just not, and it's just. My thoughts are with everybody from Nova Scotia going through these hard times, and it's very hard to understand why these things happen or why they had to happen to you, and it's very, very tragic what happened. So if anyone from Nova Scotia is watching, stay strong and reach out if you need some help.
Thank you, Quick Dick, for that. We're down to our last quarter of an hour here. We've had so many good questions coming in. I'm going to keep going with our audience questions because they're
absolutely.
Okay.
Quick Dick is an open book. Let's do this.
An open book. Okay. Let's rage it. This one is more a comment from Rod, who asked, "Where is our Churchill coming from to lead us in this new battle?" And then Wally has a question which really follows up on that. he wants to know, have you been approached by any political party, Quick Dick McDick, to stand for election? I know you referred to this earlier, but he says provincially, federally, or even at the curling rink.
Oh yeah, you get local guys all the time. Actually, are we counting Farmer Coffee Row as a political party? Because if you sit and listen to it, they consider themselves a political party, and they can fix everything that is wrong with the country tomorrow. Is how that works. No, like officially, I never have, nor would I expect to. There's a lot of things on Quick Dick McDick Unlimited there that. I mean, people are going to be able to like, but a lot of politicians, unfortunately, aren't going to be able to share just for the simple fact that Quick Dick's not very politically correct, if that's how you want to put it. But to answer your question, no, I have not. And as far as the Churchill comment goes, that's, it is really going to take a strong leader to be able to make things right. Where is that leader? I'm not sure. I think there's some candidates out there.
I think we can all see you with a stogie. You could pull it off with the Churchill.
I fear a stogie because it might light the beard on fire, and that's I've had some incidents with a welder recently that would caution me with hot things around this. This is only my first year with one, so I'm not very used to it yet. You really got to watch rotating parts as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a terrible way to end the YouTube experience, especially when it's on live. We wouldn't want that, Quick Dick. So take care. I've got a good question here from Marion, and back to a little more policy intensive, because we know that you're a thinker as well as a great entertainer. What's your alternative to a federal carbon tax? We were talking about that earlier, given the urgent need for major reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Asks Marion, your thoughts?
Yeah. Marion, that's a great question, actually. I think it's important for people to look at the amount of tax that we already pay. And whether carbon tax is just something that is being put upon us to hide behind. Because if everyone actually looks at, let's just say, liquor consumption tax or excise tax that we pay at the pumps on gas, there's like off the top of my head, there's a significant amount of tax that we already pay as taxpayers. Saying, hey, here's more tax that you can pay here, here's more tax that you're going to pay here, you're actually going to be charged GST on top of this carbon tax that we're implementing. If the government is going to try and bring it out as a rebate program, climate action incentive program is actually what it's called. I think it's dishonest from the hide behind. I think the alternative to a carbon tax would be, if you want to use or implement a carbon tax, the first step would be to have an alternative for your larger emitters to use, or some different avenue they could take. Right now, the biggest thing I disagree with a carbon tax is that it's just not giving anybody any options. It's just you're just going to pay this no matter what, and even right down to consumers with what they pay for products off the shelf. The step one would be to have an alternative. And then I think it would be fair to say that if you're not using that alternative once we have it, then unfortunately you're going to have to pay a tax if you're going to stay on that old system, kind of thing, right? I would think that would be something that would be fair. And I would say, hey, okay, well, you know what? I can't do that right now, so I'm going to pay the tax, but I'm going to get set up to do that, and I'll do it later. But that's not what we've been given. So I could see a program like that maybe being a little more received a little better by population, I would think. But then I'm not a scholar in the matter either, right?
Now in Saskatchewan, we know that you use a lot of coal for electricity, but you've also got things like the Boundary Dam, where you've got carbon capture, huge investments there. Recently, I heard from a group in the UK that was some of the largest European oil and gas companies are actually using that same technology to build in the north, adjacent to the North Sea, some carbon capture infrastructure that's going to add to their climate efforts. So it's actually made in Saskatchewan. You got uranium there. You're doing all this cool stuff, not only the lentil story, which is amazing if you dig into it, but how come the world doesn't know about what's happening in Saskatchewan?
Yeah, there's I think the unfortunate part about a lot of this stuff and carbon capture is a big part of it. And I think that's why, man, I wasn't going to touch on a lot of this stuff because there's a little bit of a spoiler for what's coming here on Monday, but that's good. We can talk about it. if you even look, down in the Weyburn neck of the woods there, where we've actually got some oil companies that are actually capturing carbon from producers of greenhouse gas emissions and using that to extract oil and gas from deep in the ground. It's some amazing technology, and we've got a lot of these, like this one specifically that's running like carbon neutral or almost carbon credit. The problem is that the oil and gas industry it's just been painted with this brush that it's dirty, and it's just not the case at all. If we really wanted to look at our largest greenhouse gas emitters, I mean, we're looking at oil and gas extraction and commercial transportation. Commercial transportation is such a huge part of our economy, and how especially a country like Canada is spread apart. But it's not just in Canada, it's in the US, it's everywhere, which is an important thing for people to remember, that if this Valentine's Day coffee cup that Quick Dick is drinking out of here was actually brought by commercial transportation one way or another. These are things we can focus on to keep reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But I think that's hopefully what we're going to highlight on Monday with what's coming out is there are a lot of companies that are doing a lot of things to move towards it. And I think those efforts are kind of falling silent in the sidelines, which is not right at all.
Yeah. I'm just looking at a note here from Deirdre, who's asking about the so-called Green New Deal and what that agenda means for the fossil fuel sector, but other resource sectors too. At the same time, the expectation that there's going to be publicly funded pharmacare and dental and all that nice food will be there and everything will be great. We'll have the same lifestyle. What's your thought on this?
This is there's a lot of great ideas out there, and there's a lot of great fundamentalists out there of what people have ideas of what can happen and where things can go. I would go back to what I'd said earlier about people remaining realistic about it and timelines of when things can happen. And I don't know why I keep going back to oil and gas when this happens, but it's just been a really sore spot with me is when we hit these parts that we're talking about here, where people are like, well, we're just going to change this tomorrow, and this is where it's going to be. Even if that's where things head in the future, we need to get out of the crisis that we're in right now. And with the amount of debt that we're getting piled on Canada here right now, we're straight up going to need an economy to be able to start to claw our way back out of that. If we can responsibly use that, and oil and gas is, one of our top exports here in Canada, we're going to need to pay for this stuff somehow. And I think that's kind of the point that I'm trying to get at, is that if we have no way to fund this or no way to pay it, it's just everything's going to fall on its face, and that's going to be a problem. It's a great idea to think about, and the other problem that we're going to have as human beings is that everybody just kind of being equals and running around saying this is just kind of how we live our life. There's an unfortunate part of humans that are a little bit greedy, that are not going to gravitate towards that. I'm one of a person that I don't need more than what I've got or can live with. It's perfectly fine. But there's a lot of people out there that just do not share that idealism. And how do we bridge that gap? Good question.
Well, I think based on this call, hearing from Rod, who must be in Alberta, he's got a premonition here that Saskatchewan's the new frontier. You've got helium. We mentioned uranium. There's rare earths present there for mining that are needed for everything from smartphones to your Teslas. So here's what Rod says: watch out, Albertans are headed to Saskatchewan soon. Now, Quick Dick, I know you're wearing a sort of baseball style hat today. Often you show up in the flappy cap to keep your ears warm.
It's getting a little warm for that soccer there. So I still got it on the shelf, but it's getting pretty warm.
But even so, I just wonder whether I could put you on the spot here. I didn't warn you about this, but maybe you could just recap some of your best bits, your best moment. We got a few minutes left here before our hour's up.
Okay.
Maybe you could, what's the thing that people most often, they come up to you at barbecue and say, can you give us that bit? Give us that bit, Quick Dick, on.
Here's the funny thing is Quick Dick with bits. I don't really have bits. And there's been a lot of people that have been after me, be like, hey man, you got to come in and do your thing. Come on down to the Tufnell curling rink and you just that YouTube thing that you do. which is really hilarious because it's not even a thing that I do. It's just I've got something on my mind. I pull out the phone, I put it in front of me, I let it rip, and then I hit stop record, and then it's kind of gone. Does this look like the kind of face that retains a lot of information?
No, not at all.
But it's my favorite bit that I've ever done. Actually, was a rhyme that I did way back early in Quick Dick's career, close to Christmas. Please don't watch it with the kids around, and I can't even say the name of it because I'm going to try and keep F-bombs off of this thing, but it's regarding the shape of our current world with Santa saying that he's not interested in going to work anymore. Was one of my favorites, but the number 9 wire bit was actually my personal favorite, and you are a seasoned veteran of the Quick Dick McDick number 9 wire group if you can say that you got sent into the house by your father to ask your mother for a coat hanger because they had run out of number 9 wire. Now, you are an elite member of that group if you actually got that coat hanger off of the rabbit ears from the TV in your living room, and you and your brothers were not allowed to watch CBC that night because you just couldn't get the station in anymore. That's real stuff. That happened to me as a child, and I think it's hilarious. The number 9 wire might actually be one of the most favorite videos that I've ever done.
Okay, well, we're all going to go look for that. We're coming down to the last few minutes here, and that's pretty much almost all the time we've got left. However, I'm going to flip over to Margaretta. She's got a little bit of closing business to do as we get towards 2 p.m. Pacific. Margaretta.
Thanks, Stuart. Great points, Quick Dick, about hopefully coming to a point where we understand where people are coming from. Not screaming F you, Greta, speaking as a Margaretta. Given this whole spiel and this idea of human kindness, we're in some really challenging times right now. Do you have any advice for the folks at home on what they can do to support folks in their community?
Absolutely, yeah. If you find yourself in a good spot, you've got some extra scratch kicking around, help out a local food bank. I think they're being used a lot more as of recently than we've ever seen a need for it before. Or if you've got a group or a charity right within your community that's actually helping locally in your community, see what you can do to help them out. Maybe volunteer some time, make a donation to them. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be money. It can be something that they're looking for, goods that they're looking for to help things out. Just do what you can to help people. Would be my advice. If you can make a donation, do it. Help people out. Everybody needs help right now. So whatever we can do to help, we should be doing.
Very good. So we're coming right up to the end here, and we always like to try to leave a little bit early. There's lots of people who are still at work, and they've probably got other appointments. So Quick Dick, will you come back in future and tell us about your next adventures that are coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. These are easier appointments to make than showing up in person because I can just kind of run to the kitchen table. And actually, I got a cup of afternoon coffee in here, so that worked out really good. Sorry, I didn't really dress up. I just kind of came, from the shop straight into the house.
Okay. So. Well, you've done us a real solid here by being the first ever guest on our live Facebook version of the ResourceWorks From Home series. So I guess we're making history here, and you're awesome. The subject of that. So thanks so much,
wow.
Dick, in Tufnell, Saskatchewan. We're going to, in a moment, just say goodbye and go dark on these cameras. So thanks all who participated. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for being there and watching. Do send your comments in later. You can find us by email if you've got the emails or Facebook or what have you. So on that note, Quick Dick, that's it for today. Thanks very much. I'm going to wave goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for dropping in, and thanks for putting this on, Stuart and Margaretta and Keith with your work in the background there. And everybody, keep being Canadian. Be awesome.
Thank you.
Take care.